Hello to the listeners out there. This is Lector's podcast. We are starting a new series of podcasts where we talk about different interesting topics regarding education, air traffic control training, because that is our field. My name is Samuli Suokas. I'm the founder and owner of Lector Consulting. I'm also an ATC air traffic control instructor, and I've been working in air traffic control training industry now for over a decade. Our heading of today is motivation powering learning. And we have a very interesting, not really a guest, because our guest is from Lector. It is Julio Granda, who is Lector's virtual learning manager. And he is an educational psychologist and an expert in the field of learning and training and education. So he will be able to give us some insights in how motivation is seen as is it an important thing in education? Is it something that we need to really consider in our actions when we are training the students or trainees? So Julio, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Samuel. Thank you very much.
It's good to have you here. It's great. It's great to do the first ever podcast. Okay, so Julio, tell me, motivation obviously is a topic that is part of any sort of human factors training in air traffic control and in aviation. It comes up all the time when we're talking about any sort of human performance issues. Motivation is really, really high up there. But if we talk about and think about motivation in learning context, how do you see this thing? Why do we need motivation in education or in learning?
Okay, when people in general feel motivated, they are more committed, more interested, and they enjoy what they are doing. They feel satisfied with the things they do. So that applies to anything, work, learning, and so on. And then there is the types of motivation. What we want really is the inner motivation or intrinsic motivation, which means that people don't need rewards or punishments to do things because they intentionally do those things because they enjoy it and it takes them closer to what they want to achieve. So we can see how this is important for learning. If we are motivated to learn, we will enjoy it and we will make the most of it and therefore learn better.
So can you tell us a bit more about what do you mean by inner motivation?
Well, inner motivation or intrinsic motivation, it just means the motivation that comes from within, that doesn't need any external influence. For example, if we're talking about learning, if a student likes history, then they will read about history and enjoy it. They don't need that the teacher is telling them, for example, that you are going to fail or you are not going to have the highest grades if you don't study, if you don't do this or that, because they like it. It's the same thing as playing the piano, for example, right? If parents force their kid to play the piano, they're probably not going to learn anything or as well if they would actually want themselves to do it, because the action itself of playing or the fact of learning is enjoyable to them. So that's inner motivation.
So you are talking about liking what you do and enjoying yourself. So is motivation then somehow tightly linked to this sort of satisfaction, liking what you do? So you have to enjoy what you're doing. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you enjoy what you're doing, enjoy the process, and enjoy the feeling that the process is taking you closer to your goals. It's basically just that you are happy doing what you are doing. You don't feel forced or pushed in any way.
So in that sense, it's quite a simple thing. If you're happy and you like what you're doing, then you are motivated. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay. So if there's intrinsic motivation, which is something that comes from the person themselves, like if a person likes doing something, they want to do it, of course. You like doing what you like doing.
Yes.
So that's inner or intrinsic motivation. So then I guess there is also extrinsic motivation. Is that the parent who forces the child to play the piano?
Yeah, extrinsic motivation is whatever that offers some reward or punishment for the action. For example, with the example of the piano, if parents tell their kids that they have to go to piano classes, otherwise they cannot, play video games or go play outside. So then they do it because they want to avoid the punishment or get the reward. Perhaps the parents say, I'm going to give you a tip, or we're going to go to buy some ice cream or something. So, or they want the reward, or they want to avoid the punishment, but it's not because they enjoy the action itself. So it's not rewarding for themselves. It's external. It's grades, or to get the positive outcomes or to avoid the negative ones.
Yeah, okay. So it could be like an extrinsic motivation can be that somebody tells you to do something, like force you, like a boss can tell you to do something that you don't like, but you do it, even though you don't like it. Yeah. So it's like this. You can force people to do almost anything, but you cannot force them to like it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You cannot force them to like it, but there's ways you can work that liking, actually. But we can go into that perhaps in a little while. But if we're talking about now extrinsic motivation and your example of the work, if your boss forces you, is because, or he has some power over, he can control the salary, or there's some punishments, penalties, whatever.
I'm thinking about the extrinsic motivation also in a sense of people like maybe studying something. Let's say, just for instance, somebody wants, as an idea, they want a big, they think that, okay, let's say, I don't really like it, but because there is a reward in the end, in the long term, that's why I go there. So I like force myself into studying that law, which was not really my first. I always just wanted to paint or something. But I will go to the law school because I want that high salary. So it could be also that the extrinsic motivation comes from, not by a person, but even from society.
Or society, from a system,
or a system, or it could be a person. It could be that your parents are telling you that, okay, we want you to be a doctor to the child or a young one. Yeah, but I don't like that. Yeah, but we have doctors in the family. We need you to go to medical school. So then it's extrinsic motivation. Then the person is there in studying something that is not really what they wanted to do, but they are somehow forced. They are a bit reluctant to be there.
Yeah, and here is like not necessarily, for example, avoiding not necessarily a punishment, because if this guy doesn't study medicine, then it's not that his or her parents are going to punish him, but he's trying to avoid the negative outcomes which could probably be disappointing his parents.
Yeah.
Or the rewards, which is the approval of the parents.
Yeah. But this is not too often the case when we're talking about air traffic control training, because when somebody applies to become an air traffic controller, it's like an active process. You have to go through a selection process usually. to get to that classroom, to get to be on that training. So even if your let's say parents or relatives or whoever tells somebody that I want you to go to air traffic control school, I want you to be an air traffic controller, it's not just a choice that sure I'll do it, I'll make it. You actually need to have a lot of effort to be in that classroom. So my point is that most often the persons who are sitting there and starting the class of air traffic control training, they, I guess, already have that intrinsic motivation. They want to be there. So then why do we have to worry about motivation if they want to be there?
Well, they can have the initial motivation, sure, but motivation is dynamic. That will change, go up and down during the process. In this case of the studies or the years of studies, it will change because of a lot of elements that will play into it, like relationships with teachers, instructors, colleagues, peers, other students. It could change depending on the tasks, the contents that they study. Are the contents interesting to them? Are the tasks, are they up for the task, like on skill level? Are they too complicated? Are they too easy? So a lot of different things would play into the motivation, and that can go up and down several times based on also each different task. A student could be very motivated to do one task that he might enjoy, but not others. So it's a really dynamic thing to the motivation. That's why it is important to have some idea of how can you handle this dynamic of the motivation.
Okay, so what sort of things then are in, or elements influence motivation? I guess there are tons of different theories about motivation, but what sort of things we as instructors and educators and training organizations, what sort of things do we need to consider to keep that initial motivation up? Because I understand that you can, even though there is the initial motivation, it's not permanent.
Exactly.
You can lose it.
You
can lose it. So what can we do as instructors and training organizations to help the students not lose that motivation?
Yeah. So there's really several theories of motivation, but one of the latest ones really summarizes these into three main elements, which are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Okay, so autonomy refers to the need that people have to have control, to see the results of their own choices, that they can make. They are free to make those choices, to make mistakes, to set their own goals, just to have control over their lives, their work, their studies, and see the results of those choices. How can you influence those things, your work, your studies, your life? So that is autonomy.
Okay, but here, if we think of the air traffic control students, they've made already that choice to be in that class. So is that the sort of control you mean, that they've made it the choice by themselves? Nobody else made that choice for them.
Yeah, that could be one thing, but it's a thing of the everyday. It's not just that you make one choice and then you have control over it. You need to have control over, in this case, the students. So over their learning path, their studies.
Yeah.
Different kinds of choices. Now, this might be a little complicated because of the curriculum, the system, how much of that can they influence. But anyhow, the instructors or the instructional designers can include the students for example, just with include them in decision making. If we're talking about that the learning outcomes at the end of some semester are about learning, for example, the correct phraseology or learning good vectoring, I don't know, then they can choose, for example, which one would they want to do first or they want to focus. What do you think? What kind of choices, because you know more of the system of ATC, so what kind of choices can they have? Can the students have? What kind of choices can instructors give them? Or is it even possible that can they be included into the design of the training itself?
That's an interesting question. And because usually the air traffic control training is like you said, it's a curriculum, there's a training program, and everybody follows it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this definitely plays into this like learner-centered thinking, that how can we adjust our methods and the way we do things according to different learners. So then in that sense, the learners would have influence in the way they are learning or they are being taught, or however you want to say that. But it is like you say, it can be a simple everyday thing. It is just letting the students decide things like, okay, if we're in a simulator with an instructor, we can let them decide, okay, how do you want me as an instructor, how do you want me to interact with you during the exercise, let's say. Do you want me to ask you questions? Do you want me to prompt all the things you need to do, or do you want to work more independently? Things like this. That already gives a choice to the student. So it's not so much of a choice like you would consider in a university student who can pick classes. Okay, this semester I want to pick this and this class or course, and then the next semester I will pick the other ones. It doesn't work quite like that, at least not yet. But it is smaller things. Just the feeling that you heard. What time do we start tomorrow? Do you want to start 8:30 or shall we start at 9 o'clock? Do we want to start with the briefing in the classroom, or do we go straight to the simulator? Whatever it is small things like that. But just to have the feeling for the student, to have the feeling that they are heard. If they have an opinion, somebody listens to them. If they have a request, somebody takes it on. It doesn't mean that we have to do everything like the students are asking. So it's not full autonomy, but anyway, the feeling that you have an influence, an autonomy over what you do. Because maybe it's easier to explain it by showing the opposite. Because the opposite is then that everybody is told to you everything. You cannot influence anything. The schedule is set and you have to obey that. We do it this way and no other way possible. Things like dictated way of doing things in the academy. Then the student don't have an autonomy.
Yes.
And well, this works also for the instructors, right? The instructors need motivation too. So they need to have a feeling of having a choice, having influence over how they can work in the academy in the same way. So because they need, of course, instructors need to be motivated as well.
Sure. They could think that the student needs extra support, but for one reason or another, the system doesn't allow it. There's no extra time that they can dedicate to that student. There's no perhaps extra exercises that they can give to them because everything has already been planned and there's no options.
And I'm thinking also things like if an instructor is supposed to give a class or a briefing or something with there's maybe a presentation slides or something, and they see a need to change something in the slide, that I actually want to make this point as well, that they can do that, or they can make that change. But if somebody says that, no, you don't change anything, you have to do it exactly like this, and you can spend only 4 minutes on this slide, and then you do 3 minutes on the next slide, and you ask only these questions and no other questions from the students. That's going to be super frustrating to the instructors. Or the fact that, hey, it's a nice day outside. Why don't we take the class outside? Let's go sit in the park and discuss whatever we need to discuss on the next lesson or class. So we can do it easily there. We have a briefing outside. I have that choice. I can make that choice as an instructor. That's motivating. But if you're restricted and told how to do your work, then it can be really frustrating. So to sum up, so we have this was autonomy, one part or element of motivation, autonomy. So the feeling of being in control or having influence in things.
Yeah, and responding to people's interests. I would just think before we go to the next point that autonomy could also be worked by giving responsibility, because having responsibility gives you also that sense of control. So, for example, it could be something like role playing if we're talking about the students. One day, a student, probably an advanced student, could have the role of an instructor to less or to beginner students. I don't know. I don't know if that's possible in ATC, but I'm just saying that giving the responsibility or some responsibility gives you also that sense of control and autonomy.
Yeah, if you're not forced to take that responsibility, you actually need to want to take that responsibility as well.
Yeah.
So the next one you mentioned, you said autonomy competence.
Yeah, it's about people feeling that they can do a good job, that they are good for the job, they can improve at doing that job. They want to feel that they have the skills needed, that they know how to do it, that they can do it, so that they are more likely to try it.
In other words, we can say that competence is motivating because you like doing things that you are good at. It's nice to do things that you can do. Because as soon as you're given a task or work that you don't know how to do it, you're not good at it, it's not fun. You don't like doing it. I guess I could, I'm just thinking myself that if I've done some house renovations a few times, I'm not good at it. I'm not great at working with my hands, it doesn't work out too fine. So I've never actually liked it. I've realized it afterwards. I've been forced to do it. I've never enjoyed it. I've done it, but it's not been fun because I don't know how to do it. I'm not good at it. But then when something flows, when something is nice, I know how to do this, then it's great. Like, let's say downhill skiing. If you go to a ski resort and you're a good skier, it's fun. But if you're not a great skier, if you don't have the skills and somebody puts you in those steep Swiss alpine slopes, it's going to be terrifying and you don't like it.
Like, if you can see your progress, your perspective can change. Because, of course, when we learn something new, we don't know it. And that doesn't mean that we are going just to dislike it or not be motivated by it. Because a good challenge is also motivating. But, of course, if it's too difficult, then it might not be. And if it is too easy, then it's boring. So it's about this balance.
So when, let's say, again, an air traffic control student comes in for the first day in class, and then we would show them an experienced controller doing the work, it might look like that is too much for me. That's too difficult. I will not be able to do that. It's frustrating. So it's not unmotivating if it looks too difficult. But like you said, when an ATC student starts their learning, they do not have the competence. They do not know what to do. So it's basically it's impossible to be good at in the beginning.
Yeah.
So then in this competence idea, it is more of a feeling that I am learning. I can learn. So, and I am progressing, and I'm beginning better. I'm getting better and better and better. Then it's rewarding. Then you can enjoy it, and you feel like, yeah, this is great. I like doing this because I am progressing. But if you have a feeling that you're not progressing, you're working your butt off, but you don't see the progress, then it's frustrating. Why do I bother?
Yeah, you present at the beginning a challenge that seems impossible at that time. So, but the question is, how do I make them feel competent here to an objective that seems so far away still, right? So it's about how do you show them, like you said, that they are learning towards that end goal needs to be motivating. So yeah. How do you break down all that complex set of processes and skills needed to achieve that end so that they can see that they are getting closer? Because it's about feeling competent. So how are you getting closer to the goal? So how can you show, in this case, how can you show your students their progress? How can you show them that they are learning so that they feel competent and they don't lose motivation?
So
that's why also, feedback is also important in this case. But yeah, that's the challenge.
So the challenge is that we need to show the students that they're doing a good job. Isn't it? When we break it down, we want to and we need to show the students that they are doing a good job and they are good at whatever phase they are in the training, that they are good at it and they are progressing, because that brings them motivation. That supports their motivation. Because as soon as we start pointing out the mistakes and telling that that's bad, that's not great, you're doing a lousy job, you need to work harder, this is not going anywhere, that is a real letdown, and that's a real destruction of motivation. A discussion I've had with many can we say old school instructors, where they don't feel that we should be pampering or complimenting the students too much, because it gives them, in their words, it gives them a false sense of competence. But it's not that really. It's motivating factor. It's actually pushing them further. Because when they feel that they're doing a good job, they want to do it more. So they want to come to the school and do the next day. But if they are told that you're no good, then they're going to say, well, if I'm no good, then probably I should quit. Yeah, why bother again? Motivation drops. Okay, that's interesting.
But it's not only like complimenting them or pampering them. You need to use facts, compare a previous performance to the new one, so that they can actually see that improvement. It's not just an empty compliment. It's grounded on evidence.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. It's not just that you have to compliment just because an empty compliment is not motivating. It is the challenge that you talked about is more about how do we show the progress to the student? How can we show the student that they have learned, that they are getting better, and they are better today than they were yesterday?
Exactly.
How do we show that? So that's the challenge, and that's there we don't have any checkmate answer of how to do that.
Well, there is not really checkmate answer, but for example, when you have really clear goals, measurable goals, it's easier to show the progress. Previously, they did it only 3 times and the next time 5, so that's already a progress. Measurable, clear goals also help you support the competence of the student because you have the evidence to show the progress.
Yeah. So that's the importance of learning objectives, because you can use them to verify learning. Mm-hmm. And that you can use with the student to support their feeling of competence, which then supports their motivation, which helps learning.
Exactly.
Was that the summary of
yes,
how competence supports?
How it relates to motivation, exactly.
Beautiful. But there's more. There's more than just autonomy and competence. There's also
there was relatedness. This refers.
What does that mean?
This relatedness refers to connection with other people. We want to feel part of a community. We want to feel that what we do matters to others, that somebody cares about what we are doing, having a sense of purpose. In general, this sense of connection with others and with something greater than ourselves. So connection with people and having purpose, in short.
Okay, so what does that mean? That sounds like quite a big concept. So how does that show, or how does it work in education or in the training context?
Well, this can be supported also with minor things. For example, having pair group activities in which the students can work together in a collaborative way, for example, some sort of group assignments. Things as simple as the instructors, the teachers minding and caring about the relationship with the students, getting to know them as a person more than just the student or the colleague. So those are simple ways, just as a teacher or as an instructor, to foster, to facilitate interaction between, students, peers, and also from the perspective of the instructor and the student, just having this, taking care of the relationship, having a good relationship, and showing that as a teacher or as an instructor, you care for that student. You care about their progress, you care about their learning, you care about their interests, you consider their perspective, their viewpoints, their opinions, you include them in decision making. So all of these things contribute to improve the relationships, and then the feeling of relatedness. And about the purpose, also as a teacher, as an instructor, you can show them your passion. You can show them how their work is important for other people, how that improves the lives of others.
So to show the purpose of the work, so it means, in other words, if I'm thinking about that, that means that it is important that the student feels like they're doing something important. So
exactly.
Whatever they're doing matters. Like, let's say in air traffic control training context, the profession they are learning is an important profession. It is something that is not available to many people. There are not too many air traffic controllers in the world, and you are in that sense in a special group doing a very special job, or learning a very special job. And it is in all our benefit for you to learn this profession. The instructors show that they value the profession. They really feel that it's important that people do a good job. You cannot shrug off things regarding air traffic control. It has to be done properly. It has to be learned properly. And like you said, there has to be this sort of passion for the training, because if an instructor comes across as somebody who doesn't really care about how we do this job, then the student is looking at that instructor and saying, well, if you don't care, why should I care? If you don't think this is important, why the heck do I bother? Why should I show effort and sweat over something that you, my instructor, think is not important? You don't value.
So they have to feel proud about their career.
Exactly. You have to be proud. You need to be showing that this matters. This is important. People value. Somebody really cares about you doing this job. Somebody needs you to do this job. You know, there is value in what you do. And also so that was the purpose, that you're doing something great. You're doing something that is value. You are contributing to the world, in a way.
Exactly.
In big way. You are making the world a better place. You are making a mark.
Yeah, and that is actually true, because at the end, the ATC is also about taking care of safety of people. So that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. It is an important job. Then the belonging or relating to a group, that is also something that we can foster and focus on in ATC, in training and in traffic control training as well, by basically showing that we want the students to be there. It is important for us that the student is there. It's great. We like having them there. Again, if I reformulate this in a way that it is always nice to go to a place where people want you to be.
Yeah, where you feel you belong.
Where you belong, like where you are wanted. When you go somewhere and people greet you and say, hey, good to see you, nice to have you here, I like that you're here, it's important for me that you are here. That is part of the relatedness. You belong to a group. Also, and this applies to instructors, other students, and anybody in the environment. When you come there, you feel like, hey, these are my colleagues, this is my group. People greet, treat you in a friendly way. You do collaborative work, you do things together. You are not excluded, you are included in the group. So that's the environment we like to be at.
Yes.
And that's, as instructors and as training organizations, we need to really consider. Do we make these students feel like we care for them? And on individual level, like you said, we want to show that we care about the learning. If a student is studying an important job, then I show, as an instructor, I show that my goal and my passion and desire is to have you learn this job. So I am making a lot of effort helping you learn the work. So I care about you, I care about your learning. And it is important for me. Another thing that, again, those so-called old school instructors are not always too comfortable with, showing that I actually have to show care for the student.
Okay.
Even love, you gotta love your students, because if you love your students, then you really invest in them. Then you really
walk the extra mile.
You go the extra mile. Exactly. You go the extra mile with them to help them. But if you don't care for them, if they are just numbers to you, yeah, next, then you don't go the extra mile. And then you as an instructor do not give your best work. You don't give your best shot for that student, which might be the tipping point for the success of them. Because if you feel that you are not wanted somewhere, it is really difficult to work well in that sort of environment.
Mm-hmm.
If you come to the room, or if a student comes to the room and the instructor says, oh shit, it's you don't like working there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's summarize. Let's bring this topic of how motivation powers learning to a conclusion. So can you summarize the 3 points?
Well, I was just thinking right now on seeing it, like, imagine if we wouldn't have any of these elements. For example, I go to my workplace. Nobody likes me there. I hate to go there. What I do is so boring or so complicated. I cannot do it. I hate it. I have to do everything what they tell me to do like a machine. I cannot even think for myself. I hate it. So without autonomy, competence, and relatedness, really that person must be very miserable. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And that's an interesting take on motivation. Because the way I've seen motivation before is that we need to like generate the interest for the topic for the student. So that would be motivating, but it's not actually that. The student already has the motivation, or to the inner motivation to be there, and the motivation to learn. But our job as instructors and as training organizations to keep it up by creating, to keep it up with this autonomy, giving them control and influence, competence, showing them that they're good, making sure that they actually are good as well, giving them tasks that they can do, and relatedness, making it an environment where they are wanted. We show that they are doing important work.
So we can see how, all these elements together can really have people and students motivated for what they're doing. And it can be minor things. It doesn't always have to be so great choices and great displays of competence. And like those are good, but the little things on an everyday basis will support this motivation as in general.
Yeah, exactly. And just being aware of this, understanding that there is such a thing of that it is good for their students to be, that they have influence, and it is important for them to feel that they can do things, and it's really important that they feel that they belong in the group. If you have this in mind, that changes your behavior already.
Yeah.
And it's not, like you said, it's not big things, it's not complicated things in the end, it's small things that add up and create this environment where students can keep up their motivation, which makes them basically, it makes them learn better.
It is true.
All right.
If they enjoy it, they will do it better.
Exactly. So your job is to make them enjoy what they're doing. Great.
That's it.
Thank you, Julio. It was great talking to you about this motivation.
It was.
And this is the end of our first podcast. This was Lector podcast about motivation powering learning. We talked with Julio Granda, who is Lector's virtually learning manager, educational psychologist, and an expert in motivation. thank you very much for listening, and make sure you follow Lector's social media streams. We have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have LinkedIn, we have stuff in YouTube as well. So make sure you follow them, so you will be notified when the next podcast is going to be up. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.